Hello there, guys. RMP792 here, and we're up to episode 7 of Discovery, I think. Sounds about right. Anyway, we're up to, was it Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad? Congratulations, guys. It's taken you 7 episodes, but you've finally written an episode of Star Trek. It's still got problems, but this has been the most Star Trek-like episode so far, and it's probably the best episode of the show so far, I think. Maybe. Not sure. Anywho. So as per usual, massive spoilers abound, so, don't watch this if you haven't watched the episode yet and you plan to. So this is the time loop episode. Yeah, every sci-fi show does one of these sooner or later, but quite often they're quite good. The I can't remember the name of the episode. The episode of TNG where the Enterprise keeps exploding is a fun one. Where Window of Opportunity in Stargate SG-1 is a really good episode. So time loops can do interesting things for the narrative, and this show kind of does it differently to most, because normally in any given time loop episode you're following the person who's aware of the loop. So in Window of Opportunity you're following O'Neill and Tilk, who are the two who are aware of the loop. In the TNG episode, everybody in the ship sort of starts getting deja vu. They feel like they've been through it before. Which is never really explained, but who cares? Whereas in this, we're mostly following Michael and, to a lesser extent, Tyler, while it's Stamets who's actually aware of the time loop. Which is actually an interesting way to do it, but it does lean into one of the things about this show I don't like, namely that it's not really an ensemble show. It's a show about this one person and all these other people who are around. Whereas even while the original show, you can argue, is primarily about Kirk, everybody else still feels like they've got important jobs and they're main characters. Whereas by the TNG and the DS9 and the Voyager and Enterprise kind of had this problem as well. It was mostly about Archer, and most of the rest of the crew were kind of put off to the back. So, as a general rule of thumb, good Star Trek is an ensemble show, and at the moment this doesn't really feel like one. Everybody feels like a supporting character to Michael, which is not the right way to be going about it, because Star Trek is at its best when it's an ensemble piece. But anyway, though, as I say, them doing the time loop stuff from the perspective of people who aren't aware of the loop actually kind of works and is kind of interesting. So it was an interesting take on the episode. So it basically starts with Michael going through her worst and most terrible ordeal yet. A party. I'll be honest, I knew what the punchline to that joke was going to be when she started setting it up. It's like, okay, this is going to be a social engagement of some kind. Maybe, I don't know, dinner at the captain's table. No, Lorca. Gabe does not really feel like the kind to do sit down dinners with his crew. He feels more like the pot noodle in his room full of weapons kind of captain. So I don't know. Maybe it's going to be it's going to be some sort of social event. Yep, and then it's it's a party. Yep, called it. Tilly letting her hair down and I'll admit Tilly's growing on me. I really did not like what we saw of her the first episode she was introduced, but she is growing on me. So kudos there. Especially when the implication is she's a bit of a horny drunk, and this is good. I genuinely like that. There's no sort of particular judgment on it beyond you're kind of not picky. I just go through phases. Like I'm going through a musician phase. So the line later of I've just seen the hottest guy ever, and he's in a band, and he's over there, just to get rid of her was really, really funny. I enjoyed that. So apparently in the future they play beer pong. I'd like to think we'd have grown out of that as a species by the time of Star Trek, but oh well. And at this point in the time, my mother's comment when we were watching this episode was, are they all actually drinking alcohol? To which my comment was, yeah, synthahol hasn't really become a thing by this point in the timeline. For the record, the difference between alcohol and synthahol is that synthahol takes a lot more to get you drunk, but it doesn't give you a hangover at the end of it. Whereas alcohol is just alcohol. And people who like alcohol tend to not like synthahol terribly much. Or, correction, we know that Montgomery Scott hated synthahol because, well, to quote Bernard Black, this is children's booze! But, anywho, so they were getting drunk, and then Lieutenant Obvious Spy, who I still think is an obvious spy, is giving a sort of toast about the Fallen and all that, all that business, which is all well and good. Then they get called to the bridge because they've spotted a thing which Gabe thinks might be dangerous, and when they find out it's an injured space whale, he's like, well, that's boring. I don't get to kill anything today. I'm increasingly convinced that Gabe is just utterly insane. He really is. I mean, as I said last week, Jason Isaacs is playing this role really, really well. He's not going to make it to the end of the season. Because one of two things basically has to happen. Either Lorca has to go through a major character shift, or he's going to die. Because there's no because he's just too un-Starfleet. And side note, that nudge thing they did back in the third episode where they brought on to Discovery, and people have got black badges, and it's you've never seen those before. Still hasn't been addressed since, so that's going to have to turn up at some point, presumably. I'm calling it right now. Gabe is going to either undergo a major character shift or he's going to die. One or the other, probably the latter. Actually, to be fair, he dies a lot in this episode, but anyway. So they bring out, they beam in the space whale, which beaming a creature from zero that's used to zero gravity into a 1G environment, that cannot have done it any favours. I mean, I'm assuming if it surfs stellar winds, it's reasonable at resisting, at least a little bit of gravity, but... And the joke about the fact that, they get so involved in just eating alpha particles that they often forget to mate. That's... Okay, first, so they're basically space pandas. And second, that was a jab at Michael, wasn't it? Because let's be honest, given how Michael is, I'm assuming she's probably never had sex. It's difficult to tell because, she admits in this episode that she's never been in love, but that's not necessarily the same thing. And, given her relatively repressed nature, it's entirely possible that she hasn't. At the same time, Vulcans really don't like talking about it because, the Ponfar is a thing that happens and you just don't talk about it at all. So it's entirely possible that she, if she had sexual needs at some point, that she took care of them in a practical, logical way. Now that could be, anything from having a holiday on Risa to, anything else. So it's entirely possible that she hasn't, and that this is, her first really sort of awkward fumbling in that direction. Entirely possible. Don't really care. We'll see where it goes. So they beam the space whale on board, and then Harry Mudd walks out of it in a spacesuit and shoots a bunch of people, and gets partway through the ship before getting trapped, and then is then like, ha ha ha, but I can do it all over again. I would like this character if he was named literally anything else. Because this character, who, let's be honest, kills a crap ton of people in this episode with no remorse at all. Now, granted, because of the time loop thing, none of them stay dead permanently, but he didn't really care about that. He's not Harcourt Fenton Mudd. Harry Mudd he's a crook. He's a con man. He's a bad guy. But he's never been a murderer. And this version of Mudd was way too au fait with killing. So, now granted, he's got 10 years to mellow out a bit and learn to hate his wife. But, yeah. Now, again, if this was any character other than Harcourt Fenton Mudd, would have been fine. But they've taken... There are so many elements of this show that feel like they wrote it and then somebody said, oh, we need name recognition. Do that, name it after this character. But that doesn't make sense. Do it anyway. Anywho. But yeah, so Harcourt Fenton Mudd, who doesn't really feel like Harcourt Fenton Mudd, has somehow got his hands on some sort of time loop crystal, which is key to a device on his arm, and a bigger crystal that's inside the space whale, which is why the space whale's a bit ill, incidentally, because it swallowed a bloody starship. Or at least, I'm assuming, sort of shuttle-sized ship or something else. Something of that ilk. But anywho... I keep saying anywho. Don't I today? It's weird. Anyway. I almost did it again without realising. So they're basically stuck in a loop, and we're not entirely sure how many loops go by between that first time we see Harry Mudd and the second time. I'm assuming it's several. Given that by the next time we see Stamets, he's had time to figure out what's going on and try and prevent it, though he's not really getting anywhere. So they go through a whole bunch of different loops. With by its very nature, a time loop show is tricky to talk about because you see them doing the same basic thing a bunch of times in slightly different ways. And it's the slight variations that make the episode interesting. And this does. This is a solid, enjoyable time loop episode. So you see Mudd basically trying to figure out... He realises that the spore drive is what makes Discovery special. And then he's trying to effectively use it to nick the Discovery. But obviously he doesn't realise that the final component is Stamets himself. Who incidentally now has some sort of cybernetic gizmometer on his arm that lets him interact with the device without getting impaled. I still stand by my statement that there's far too many goddamn cybernetics for this point in the timeline, but... hell, you want a fan wanky theory that they could have done? If they'd set it 100 years afterwards, scavenged Borg tech. Make it something that simple. It's a case of, yes, the Borg are evil, and, they've done some very bad things, but, technology that we got from studying Borg drones has actually led to massive breakthroughs to help with, amputees or people with serious injuries. Make it a case of some good coming from some bad. That would make perfect sense for where Starfleet's suddenly getting all this, all the cybernetic tech from. Or hell, trace it back to another minor race, like, I don't know, the Binars or something. Those guys are weird. Side note, if you don't remember the Binars, they're a group that turn up in TNG who basically replace parts of their brains with mechanical stuff. So they're basically like 40k tech priests. And they communicate in binary. I think the episode is literally named in binary. It's something like 1100101101, or what? I can't remember. That was a completely random string of ones and zeros. But I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it again. But yeah, so you've got Stamets trying to stop him, and he manages to get lucky and shoot him in the back at one point. But obviously, big problem. Yes, but that doesn't stop the time loop, and obviously a whole bunch of people got killed there, because again, this version of Mudd is a psychopath. And then we come to the funniest bit of the episode, the Jason Isaacs death montage. Where Mudd just keeps sort of walking in and killing him, and killing him, and then beaming him into space, and he dies in a lot of ways here, and because I don't like Gabe, it's actually quite amusing watching him die in a whole bunch of different ways, and it almost makes me wonder if they did that on purpose. They were like, people are going to hate this character, aren't they? Yes. Should we show him die a bunch of times? Brilliant! The Jason Isaacs death montage is quite amusing, I will give them that. No idea what the hell's happened to his Tribble, because at some point that Tribble has to get close to Tyler and freak the hell out, doesn't it? That's going to happen at some point. Either it was a pointless nod, or they've actually remembered an important element of Tribble backstory. An important element of Tribble backstory. This is what it means to be a nerd, people. Anywho. God damn it. I keep using that word at the moment. So, I also keep using so, and yes, and, connecting words. But, okay. So, we basically just go through the time loop a bunch of times, and then we get a really good scene with Stamets, who's he's managed to convince Michael that there's a time loop going on and he needs her help. And it's really weird. As a scene, it makes no sense. Because, him dancing with her and giving her advice on how to deal with, with her burgeoning feelings for Lieutenant Obvious Spy doesn't make sense because she's not going to remember any of it. And while, yes, him telling the story of how he met the doctor whose name I can't remember is actually really, really sweet, and it's genuinely nice that we are getting a gay relationship in Star Trek, and they are treating it absolutely no different than, any writers would treat a straight relationship, is really, really good. It's not like they need some big grand thing. It's just, yes, the 23rd century. Who gives a toss? So that is a very, very good thing. And once again, to anybody who claims that this show is pandering to the SJWs, because Star Trek has literally always done that. It was the 60s, and they had a very unsubtle episode about how racism is bad. They had a Russian, a black woman, and an Asian guy on the bridge, rather than just a team of white people. An entire chunk of, Spock is a mixed race heritage, fairly literally, and none of this is ever an issue. Even McCoy, when he's, calling Spock things like a green-blooded hobgoblin, if he actually thought he was, hurting Spock's feelings in any way, he wouldn't do it. Because McCoy might be cantankerous, but he's not an asshole. So anyone who complains that this show is just pandering clearly has never paid enough attention to Star Trek, because Star Trek has always, as you put it, pandered to the SJWs. Anywho. But, we've got that scene, which is a really nice scene that makes no sense. And then we've got Tyler and Michael, having a bit of a dance and a bit of a kiss, and then Tyler gets killed by some sort of horrible dark matter bomb thing, or whatever the hell they were. And then she basically reveals, because Mudd's basic attitude is, hey, I've got everything I need now, because he's confessed that he's the key to the spore drive, so I can make this work. So I don't have to do this time loop thing anymore. But obviously she wants Tyler to be alive, so she admits who she is, and points out that the Klingons would pay through the nose for her, and probably, I don't know. Klingon honor code is weird. She killed, their Messiah, and she did it in combat. Granted, she shot him in the back, but hey, if you turn your back on an enemy in the middle of a fight, it's your own fault for getting stabbed there, is the Klingon attitude. A knife in the back is perfectly justified if you're in the middle of a fight. And again, we know this from Deep Space Nine. There's literally an episode where it's 3 Klingons working together with Dax to basically get revenge on this guy who killed their firstborns. And while the guy is distracted with Dax, one of the others stabs him in the back. And that's not dishonourable, because at the end of the day, it's a fight. If you're not paying enough attention, that's your own bloody fault. They... Honestly, they wouldn't want her as a prisoner. They'd want to kill her in some sort of battle to prove that they were worthy of killing the enemy that took down their Messiah, is the way I would interpret the Klingon honor code. People would probably have different interpretations, but there they are. Or then again, maybe they just claim that they took her in some sort of honourable combat, and captured her alive because she was weak and pathetic. They wouldn't want her to be weak and pathetic. They'd want her to be this big sort of conqueror. Anyway, whatever. I don't agree with that, but it is what it is. And yeah, from there, what happens from there? Oh yeah. So from there we go into the final loop where Mud comes on board and everybody, and they fiddle around with some stuff. We see them do that, and then Mud comes up to the bridge and they basically just surrender to them because it's pointless at this point. Side note: Michael has to have told Stamets her plan somehow, even though he wasn't there, because otherwise he wouldn't remember it to change time like that. That's a plot hole, and again, that's a problem with the fact that this show is focusing so much on her rather than being a truly ensemble piece. If Stamets had known about this somehow, it would have been fine, but we never see any indication that she tells him or that somebody else tells him or what, so I don't know. Somehow he has to have found out. But yeah, so they sort of surrender to him and he sends out a signal to the Klingons. And they go through the whole rigmarole, and then they get his gun away from him, and he's like, haha, but because you don't actually have control of the computer because we fiddled with the captain's chair, which somehow helps. So they're a bit smug about that, and he's like, well, there's still Klingons coming, you're still doomed. Yeah, there actually isn't, because who we contacted wasn't the Klingons, it was your wife. And her gun-running murderous father. So, yeah, that was a cute thing. This Stella, here's the thing. We haven't seen Stella before in Star Trek. Not exactly. Because in the episode where, which is called I, Mud, incidentally. In the episode where Harcourt Fenton Mudd is basically trapped on this planet of androids, who their only desire is to serve him, but he's not allowed to leave. So while he's had a whole bunch of androids made up of very, very pretty women and things like that, because of course he has, he has also had made up a robot copy of his wife, who looks about 30 years older than the actress they cast for a period about 10 years later. Maybe living with Mud just ages you. And yes, who basically is a shrill harpy who screams at him to do stuff. And the reason he's had this robot version of her made is so that he could yell at her to shut up, and she actually does. Which, I'm sure his quotation is something like, I could never get her to do that in real life. So there's now granted 10 years will change you, but this Stella did not feel anything like what we know of her from before. So again, would have been better named literally anything else than Harcourt Fenton Mudd. So yeah, they just let him go off and go off with his wife and his rather scary father-in-law, and he suffers basically no punishment for murdering Gabe 50 odd times, plus however many times he however many random crew members he killed. We saw at least 7 or 8 on screen, because there was at least a couple of disintegrations, one person lying in a pool of their own blood, and several others who he definitely shot, but who went down rather than disintegrating. So they could have just been stunned, but so yeah, the fact he gets away scot-free, even if he does have to tolerate his rather scary father-in-law, just feels wrong. Basically, I will admit that. So yeah, so overall, this is probably the best episode of Discovery so far, albeit it's still got significant problems. But as I always say, first season of every Star Trek show sucks. So we'll see where they're going. I still want more focus on the other characters. And again, at the moment, a lot of these people feel like extras. So we've got the Black Helmswoman, or the redhead from the Shinjiao, who's now got the sort of cybernetic Y-shaped thing on her head. We've got that alien who's got the sort of grey and the black. And again, for the love of God, at least let me know what these people are called. I mean, hell, there's a joke about it in the episode where he points a gun at some communications guy and is just like, "You random communications person whose name isn't important," and it feels like that guy's probably listed in the credits as random communications officer or whatever. So let me know who these bridge crew are, and give them some names, give them some goddamn dialogue other than yes sir and aye aye sir and we can definitely do that for you sir and incoming enemy or whatever. More than just generic dialogue. And as I say, in particular, we really feel like by now we should have had some sort of confrontation between the redhead who was on the Xinjiao and Michael, because it's pretty much Michael's fault. She's got that cybernetic whatever the hell it is. Don't get me wrong, she's kind of pulling off the asymmetrical hairstyle, but So Discovery's main problems continue to be it needs more focus on its wider cast, and it still should not be a prequel. But other than that, it was a good episode. That was episode 7, I believe, which was... I said it earlier. Magic to drive the sanest man mad, or something along those lines. But yes, anywho, side note, Stamets is probably not going to make it to the end of the season either, unless they undo what they've done to him with the spore drive, because he's losing it. He's become incredibly sort of happy-go-lucky and bouncy, and we know there's something sinister going on because of the whole reflection mirror thing they did a couple of episodes back. So I don't know. Either way, reasonable episode, and I'm gonna keep going. I'll see where they take it from here. I seem to recall we're coming up to the mid-season break. I feel like there's only about hang on. I'm just going to check IMDb on this, because I feel like there's only sort of 1 or 2 more episodes before we hit the mid-season break. Okay, broadcast dates. 5th of November, 12th of November. Yeah, 2 more episodes until we hit the mid-season break, which is Civis Pacem Parabellum. Yeah, I have no idea what that means. I could probably look it up, but I don't care. And Into the Forest I Go. Then we get a break until the 14th of January, so a couple of months, and half a dozen more episodes after that. So only 15 episodes total, but it has been confirmed for season 2 at this point. So hopefully they can take the feedback and and change it up. And my feedback at the moment is more ensemble. So give the supporting characters more to do, so we actually get to know them a little bit. More scenes that are, to all intents and purposes, characters shooting the breeze, and give us more crew character combinations that we haven't really seen yet. So give us a conversation between, for example, Saru and Tyler, for example, because I don't think we've seen that yet. Give us... I don't know, I'm trying to think. Here's a thing that could be interesting. Given that we think Tyler is a Klingon, have him trying to duck his medical exam in some way. So that he's basically got the doctor whose name I can't remember, the one who's in a relationship with Stamets, basically following around, bugging him to go to his physical, and he's ducking it. And the whole point of the episode, gives us that kind of he doesn't like doctors, and it's kind of implied that maybe it's the whole Klingon spy thing. So we'll see. It's still a good show. It's just a show I have a lot of problems with, and those two things are not mutually exclusive. I can admit a thing is flawed and still like it. So that's where we're at the moment, and I was not actually expecting this one to get all the way to 30 minutes, but it has. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in future videos.